let me turn it, let me turn it over to candidate Rudy Salas, who's running for Congress in CD 22.
Great. Thank you, Molly. And thank you, Linda. I appreciate that. And thank you for that introduction. But more than anything, thank you guys for everything that you're doing. I love that you started with the video of Erica, right? 99 years old and still caring about what's happening in our community, what's happening in our country. And I'm glad that or Congressman Salud Carbajal was able to give her a recognition. And so hopefully I can do that as well. But I got to get to Congress to do that and recognize all the hard work and dedication that everybody puts in. I always remember the Margaret Mead quote. It basically says, never underestimate what a small group of like-minded people can do and what they can accomplish. I remember here in the Central Valley when we started decades ago, people were like, look, this is all Republicans around here, but we all got together and we started changing things, and now we're purple and we've won blue seats, and we've won local elections, as board of supervisors, the city council races, the school board races. And that's what it takes. It just takes a team of dedicated folks coming together, helping each other out. And what I love is that you guys have expanded your community beyond your own community to include places like Congressional District 22 and places. I think you said you guys made calls into 9 different states, which is fantastic, and doing over 100 what'd you say, 130,000 calls into all those states, which is fantastic. But just real quick, let me fill in a little bit of the gaps about just kind of who I am. So my name is Rudy Salas. I'm running for Congress. I was born and raised actually in the district. I remember waking up at like 3:30 in the morning with my dad. My dad ran a crew out in the fields. And so we would have to wake up early and go pick everybody up before we went out to work. So I would wake up before the sun got up. I would tell people, and then we'd come home. We got paid piecemeal, so I would come home whenever we hit our targets. And so that's what I did on the weekend, spring break, summer break, every single break, doing that. But ended up, I'm a product of public schools, went to public schools, grew up in Bakersfield and Delano. Was the only one from my high school to go to UCLA. Went to UCLA, double majored political science and history. Kind of always had 2 jobs while I was in college. As much as my parents wanted to help me, they just weren't in a position to do it. My first job after college was working at the White House. Worked for the Office of the Vice President. Actually did financial work out of all things, not even anything political. Decided to come back home, had some offers to stay there in DC and to work at some law firms in LA, but decided to come back home, worked at the local university, getting kids into college, Upward Bound program, if you're familiar with the educational programs, Migrant Scholars Camp. Did that, and then got connected with my local state senator, worked with him, ran his district office, worked in the Capitol, ran for city council. I remember when I ran for city council, back in 2010, people were like, Rudy, you're too young. Rudy, there's never been a Latino, a Hispanic on the Bakersfield City Council. There's 10 candidates in the race. Are you sure you want to do this? I said, look, this is home. This is where I grew up. I ended up winning by double digits. It became the first Latino in over 112-year history. I say that because we have an opportunity to do that again in Congress. If you can believe it or not, there's never been a Latino Congress member all the way from Sacramento to the Grapevine, so just north of Los Angeles. And so, I tell people, it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's great to be the first as long as I'm not the last, but more than anything, it's about making a difference for families and letting people know that even someone like myself, son of farm workers, somebody that's been out there, can actually strive to be at our most elevated levels in the country to actually make a difference for other families. And I know, Molly, you talked about, the millions of dollars I've been able to bring back into the district. But for me, it's really about just making a difference for people. So some of that money was like going over 100 million to my local colleges, to my community college, to my university. I went and spoke at the nursing graduation because of some of the funding we got for them. And it was, and they were telling me, Rudy, the amount of money you brought us is going to double the amount of graduates. Basically, the kids on this stage is only doubled because of the work that you've done, right? There's going to be that many more people in the healthcare field. And so for me, that's what it's about. It's about making a difference. I tell people there's a lot of folks that'll jump on a political soapbox, but I try to find myself just rolling up my sleeves and getting the work done. So that's why you always see me out in the community, whether it's a backpack drive, community drive, we're constantly doing something. So making a difference for nursing, starting a welding program, replacing clean, safe drinking water wells, for instance. Those are the types of things that I've been focusing on. Some of the things that when I've been out onto the doors and on the floor and talking to people, like that's what it's about. They want to know, like, what are you doing? How can you make a difference? How are you making a difference? And so I'm hoping some of these tidbits will help you guys as you're writing those postcards, as you're making those phone calls, as you're doing those door knocks. Hopefully you can take a nugget out of there. I tell people, there's a lot of accomplishments that I've done over the last decade, but, just find the 2 or 3 that really matter to you. For instance, if you care about, healthcare, then talk about, my votes to lower prescription drug prices, right? Or talk about doubling the size of the nursing program. If you care about education, increasing the most amount of money for our local college or for our local students in our K through 12 system. Just find those types of things, because I think that passion will come across in like a telephone call, for instance, or in a letter that you're writing or a postcard. Like those are the types of things. But let me talk a little bit about the election. I did give up my tenure in the state legislature to run for Congress last cycle. Because I tell people I live by a very simple philosophy: that's do the most amount of good for the most amount of people. And when I got the call from DC, they asked like, "Hey, we really need your help to step up for the country. We really need you in Congress." I said, "Yes, absolutely." We ran. Unfortunately, we came up just a handful of votes short, and the main culprit was turnout. We had a 34% turnout, which was just very low. Even for the Central Valley was really low. I know we saw low numbers throughout California and in New York, which was kind of abnormal for California and New York. But I tell people we had the most amount of independent expenditure money spent against us. They spent over $18 million in this race. When you consider that most congressional seats cost anywhere from 1 to 3, this was well way above that. And I think it's because they're very threatened about what I bring to the table. And so, we know that this cycle, it's all about turnout. It's all about reaching those voters, making sure that we're connecting with them, making sure that they're getting the postcard, that they're getting the phone call, that they're getting the door knocks. Let them know, like, look, this is why this is important. So for instance, like I tell folks here in the Valley, we have a lot of people that suffer from diabetes, for instance. We have one of the largest amounts of people that suffering from diabetes. And I tell people, like, look, I've actually voted to lower the price of prescription drugs and medicines. David Valadeo, my opponent, voted over 30 times to take away the Affordable Care Act. He voted against capping the price of insulin for people with diabetes at $35. Like, this is why you should care about this election. This is why you need to get involved. I tell people, I've done so many things. In fact, this week I'm going to be speaking for our veterans. So I'm going to be speaking at a Blue Star Moms event Saturday. And I tell people, like, David Valadeo just voted to cut veterans benefits. He voted against Meals on Wheels for seniors. Like, these are the types of things that are on the ballot that you should care about, that I'm sure your family definitely cares about, that our community cares about. And so these are the types of things that we need to do for our country. We know that there's a lot of decisions that are happening at the Supreme Court that affect all of us. We saw that with Roe v. Wade. My opponent signed on to the legislation with no exceptions. I was a co-author for Proposition 1 here in California to actually enshrine and protect a woman's right. Like, these are vast differences between us. And so I tell people there's a big difference between the candidates, and that you need to go out and you need to get involved. And so I tell people, even if it's 15 minutes, if it's an hour, if it's 2 hours. I had somebody helping out in a previous election that said they were doing phone calls between loads of laundry on the weekend. I said everything helps. And like, when a race comes down to just a handful of votes in every neighborhood, like, that's the difference, guys, is whether you're able to connect and tell them, like, this is what's going on, this is what they're doing. And then I tell people, because they throw so much money and so much negative stuff on TV and everything else is we got to connect with the voters to let them kind of cut through that noise and understand what the truth is, right? Don't let them buy their way out of a true election. And so I tell people democracy is best served with more people participating, and we just need a higher voter turnout and get people involved. So with that, happy to answer any questions, but that's a little bit about me, kind of my passion for running. You know, I could tell you a bunch of stories if you'd like about fights that I've had, but you know, one of the things, because we mentioned it earlier, is I remember being in the White House when I got out of college, and I remember talking to my grandmother. And my grandmother called me, and she speaks only Spanish, but she was just so proud that I was actually calling her from the West Wing. She's like, you know, mijo, like a kid from that was working in the fields is now walking the halls of the White House. And so, you know, unfortunately, she's passed on, but I know she would be so proud if we can actually make it to Congress, and something that she's always dreamed for me and for our community and our family. But you know, at the end of the day, it's about just making a difference for families and making a difference for everyone. And so I appreciate all of your efforts to get involved here in one of the most battleground congressional seats in the entire country. I tell people this is one of the most Democratic seats held by a Republican in the entire country. It's actually a Biden plus 13 seat. There's been more than a dozen articles in Politico, The Hill, and a lot of publications basically saying, look, if we want to win back the House, definitely have to win back Congressional District 22. Because if we can't win CA 22, a Biden plus 13 seat in a presidential year, the chances of us holding the House is very, very slim. Like, we just have to win this seat. We have to get involved. I tell people there's lots of ways to get involved. One, making sure people are registered to vote, that they actually vote. You can make phone calls, you can knock on doors, you can write postcards, or you can write a check. Like, you know, there's plenty of ways to actually help ensure that our democracy is thriving. I keep telling people this is the most important election ever. But I keep saying that because they keep giving me reasons every election cycle to say that. And so we don't even have to look too far with everything that's going on with the Republican controlled House of Representatives, what's happening with Trump and the trials, what's happening with the Supreme Court. Like, there's a huge difference. And I believe we're at a pivotal moment in our country's history about what American democracy is and what that's going to mean for our futures. And so appreciate each and every one of you guys being on, and I appreciate all of your help. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much. That was very impressive, and it was nice to get to really hear from you directly, your passion about serving the people of the Central Valley and, of course, of California. And we believe actually congressmen actually serve the whole country as well in some form or another, as we've learned through some of these major issues like healthcare. So we do have a few questions for you. The first question was, what is your position on the Supreme Court reform?
Oh my God. Well, first, I'm just trying to get to Congress so I can have that discussion, but I have been talking to some of the congressional leadership and some of the other congressional members. So I know Adam Schiff has a proposal out where he's looking at expanding the court, and those are all things I think we need to do. It's something right now I'm currently actually teaching at the university. And this is something that we talk about is the Supreme Court expansion, what that means and how it hasn't changed in decades. And so I'm definitely open to it. I need to learn more about it, but I think when you look at terms of representation and what that's looked like over the years, you know, I think democracy is best served by most people being more involved and people actually being able to even talk to their representatives, right? When you look at California compared to other states, for instance, you know, just how many people we represent is at such a much larger scale than other states. And so I think that needs to be balanced, but also that means also the Supreme Court, right? Because we only have 9 Supreme Court members for the entire country as well.
Great, thank you. We have another question. What is your position on the protecting LGBTQ plus rights and equality, as well as, in addition to that, the separation of state and church in our government?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Appreciate that question. In fact, I had a 100% rating with Equality California and have received their endorsement. I think we're up to 180 or 200 endorsements now, I think, Kyle, just with organizations and elected officials and community leaders that have all come on board. But look, we need to make sure that every citizen's treated equally and fairly. It's part of the Constitution. And whether LGBTQ or anyone else, everyone needs to be respected and treated with dignity.
Okay, this one's a little challenging because I don't know that this is a fact, so I'm going to ask it for you respectfully. The question is why you missed so many votes while you were in the California legislature. And if that is true, I will give you a chance to answer. What is the commitment for you in terms of future voting if you're elected to Congress?
Yeah, I mean, I voted like 9 times out of 10 on everything. The times when the Republicans were trying to make an issue is because I was trying to work out amendments and stuff. So I always voted on bills because when you vote on a bill, you actually have like 4 or 5 chances to vote on it. Because you vote on it in committee, you vote it on the floor, it goes to concurrence, comes back on concurrence, and then you have a chance to vote. So if I'm negotiating something, trying to amend something to bring everybody on board, then that's what I was doing. And if you look at a lot of those votes, that's actually what happened, is because I was somebody actually involved and actually trying to bring people together and actually get this something accomplished. I think that's why I've been one of the most successful legislators in the state capitol, and why I'm able to bring back millions of dollars into the district and actually help families across the entire state, is because I am involved in those types of negotiations. Now, the other thing the Republicans will try to look at is like one of the boards that I sat on that I would have my staff in, because I was on the floor actually taking votes. So, but we've actually voted on thousands and tens of thousands of bills. And I've chaired several committees, but they're trying to make a mountain out of an anthill with that. But that's why it's up to us to actually educate voters and let them know, like, no, this is actually what it is. If you miss votes, he wouldn't be effective. But look at how effective he's been.
Thank you, Rudy, and I appreciate you setting that straight. It is very important for us to be able to counter those arguments as well. So thank you so much. There's another question here, but I think you answered it, but I think it bears repeating. What is your position on a woman's access to healthcare, including abortion?
Yeah, I was co-author of the proposition to actually enshrine and protect a woman's right to choose.
Right, wonderful. And then the last, well, there was a question on how to get involved in canvassing for you in California 22. And I see that there's a chat going back and forth with Kyle. Kyle, whatever information you send, we'll make sure it gets out to all of our constituents here and in our organization. And hopefully we do plan on participating as well. We have not started our canvassing initiative yet. So thank you. I have one more question for you. What do you, I believe this is the last one, what feels different to you? You're out in the field here. What feels different to you from the last election when you ran, both positive and negative?
Yeah, what feels different is people getting involved and engaged a lot earlier. I feel like people are a lot more involved. For instance, like we've had a Bay Area coalition that's helped out. You guys have helped out in the primary as well. I had people actually move down into the district for the last month and a half before the primary. People that are just totally dedicated. I think last time what we heard from some folks is like, oh my God, that's such a Democratic seat, you should win this. And now this time people are like, no, we can't take that for granted, because it's all about turnout. Because if, you can have a really Democratic seat, but if people are not turning out, then you get what we have, right? A Republican and a Biden plus 13 seat. And so that's what feels different, is people being involved and engaged. One of the, you asked for both sides. I think the other side would be is I'd want to see people voting a lot earlier, right? When those ballots hit, I would love it if people were actually turning those in a lot sooner. In the primary, we just have a lot of late people, which means that we have our work cut out for us, especially when you look at a seat like this, where it comes down to like less than 5 votes in every neighborhood. Like, 5 votes, like, do we know 5 people in our own family, friends, network, right? And that can be the difference in such a critical swing seat in the entire country. So, we know we have our work cut out for us. I tell people we can no longer wait till GOTV weekend, the last 4 days. Like, no, as soon as those ballots get mailed, Like that's the kickoff of GOTV. We got to start getting people to get those ballots turned in, whether we have to drive them to the county elections office to turn those in, or whether we sign the affidavit to pick those up and turn them in for them. Like those are the types of things that we need to do. That's what we're focusing on. But I tell people it's going to take a whole approach, right? We need to make sure that we're doing the media and the TV and the mail, but it's the postcards, it's the phone calling, it's the door knocking, it's talking to people 2, 3, 4, 5 times to make sure that they're comfortable. And then a lot of times it's not that they have questions about me and the support for me. Sometimes they have questions about the propositions, and that's what gives them the hesitancy to turn in that ballot. And so one of the things that we found just kind of culturally is, I don't know if you know this, but like in Mexico, if you vote, you actually have to vote on everything for your ballot to count. And we have to educate people, well, in America, you don't have, that's not the case. You know, you can vote on the things you know, or the candidates that you like, and actually just turn in that ballot. And so we found that to be very helpful in educating voters. But, you know, really it's just making sure that you're talking to them, answering their questions, and letting them, you know, make decisions for them and their families.
We had 2 other questions come in. Do you have time to answer 2 more quick questions?
Sure.
Okay. One is really important, and I think it's worth noting, is your position on immigration. And then this, and let me just give you both questions at one time, and then I promise anything else we'll have to follow up with you, with Kyle, and get some answers for. And the other is, how are you feeling about the funding you're getting from the Democratic Party? Those are the 2 last questions, I promise.
Okay. Yeah, immigration, we need immigration reform. I tell people, you know, we got to have a pathway to citizenship. I voted on the California Dream Act. You know, we got to support our dreamers, people that want to be productive citizens here in California or in America, right? We know at the end of the day, I mean, it's the right thing to do, but it's also the most cost-effective thing to do to actually have people paying into the system. It's good for America, it makes the economy stronger. So I've already voted on that. I'm very supportive of that. And then, you know, I always tell people the other part of the immigration thing too is making sure that people get answers. You know, I can't tell you, like even in this primary, I've been talking to people that said, look, I've been waiting 5, 10, 15 years for an answer about my immigration status from the government. Like we need more people actually processing that. There's no reason why people should be waiting 15 or 20 years just for an answer. To me, that's ridiculous. And so something that definitely needs to be addressed and fixed as we start looking at immigration reform as well. The second question, I am thankful that the D-Trip and everybody has been investing in looking at this race. Obviously, I would love a lot more investment, but they want to make sure that I can, you know, raise the money that I need to raise as well so that it's worthwhile for them. So, you know, everything that I've talked, you know, leadership, I tell people we have support from the old guard and the new guard, right? So Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi has been very helpful, and lead Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, Pete Aguilar, Catherine Clark with the new leadership. They've been very helpful. We have fundraisers that are planned over the next couple of months. We've been meeting all of our target goals. It's just, you know, we have to combat, ever since Citizens United, we have to combat the dark money and the super PAC money on the other side. Like I said, of all the races in the entire country, this seat got like one of the most amount of IE money spent in it than anywhere else in the entire country, right? Up to $18 million, in fact, is what the other side was spending against us. And so for me, it's just combating. I tell people I don't got to match them dollar for dollar, but I got to be able to at least tell people what the truth is. Because what we find now is, our last cycle is, they just throw so much muck up on the wall and they just tell so many lies. They just think if they repeat the same lie enough, that people will start believing it. And so we have to like cut through that. I've been telling people at the doors and on the phones, it's like, look, this is a new form of voter suppression, is they just throw so much stuff out there and try to inundate everybody that they want you to just throw up your hands and say, well, I don't know, and not do anything and not vote. I was like, that's like a form of voter suppression, guys. Don't buy into it. Don't let them do that to you. And when I educate people on this, they're like, oh, I get it. Yeah, that's what they're, oh, forget that. No, I'm going to vote. So that's what we got to get people to do, is to understand what they're trying to do to them and kind of suppress their voice and suppress their vote and tell people like, no, part of democracy and part of our civic duty is to get out and vote and to make a difference in our community. And when we lay out the facts and when we lay out, the differences between myself and my Republican opponent, like there's vast differences about what we want for our community and what we've actually done in the community and what we want for our country. And so that's where the fight is. That's where I can use your help is with those postcards, those phone calls, those door knocks, the financial support. I mean, that's what it's going towards. And I tell people like, this is where Democrats win. This is where we've always won, is on the ground, on the doors, talking to people in our communities. And so I appreciate everything that you guys are doing, what you have done, but the fight continues and we got to win. We always say at least 4 seats. I tell people we need like a dozen and we should be winning this because there's such a difference between the parties right now. There's such a different vision for our future and for the direction of our country. We should be winning all of these seats, but we have to make sure that we do our due diligence and win California 22.
Thank you. I know you have a hard stop. We really appreciate you taking time to be with us today. It was a pleasure to meet you, and we are just so excited and thankful that we have leaders like you that are taking the helm.